Hello, everyone, and welcome to APH's ExCEL Virtual Summer Camp. While we're letting everyone get settled, let's give everyone a moment to get into the room, get comfortable, or even better, how about getting ready to do some learning? As you're all setting up, I'd like to remind everyone to set their chat to all panelists and attendees, or everyone, depending on your version of Zoom. That way our other campers and also the instructors can see what everyone is sharing. My name is Jeff Schwartz, and I'm with APH Outreach Services. We are very happy to have you all with us today. This week, our camp theme is Crime Scene Investigation Camp for grades 8 through 12. This is our target group. However, anyone is welcome to join of any age, and we hope that you'll enjoy learning with us as well. I'd like to go ahead and get started and welcome our teachers for this week. We have Detective Kathy and Detective Kaylee. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome, everyone, all our friends and potential detectives and investigators. I just want to kick off with, I think we should have a theme song. Here we go. As Jeff mentioned, I'm Detective Kathy, and I am so excited to be here with Detective Kaylee, and we get to talk about crime scene investigation. How are you feeling, Detective Kaylee?
Hi, Detective Kathy. This is Detective Kaylee, and I am very excited to be talking about crime scene investigation today. I think there's a lot of very interesting and unique information for us to learn.
So now that we have introduced ourselves, why don't you take a moment and drop your name in the chat and let us know where you're from. I was looking over the registration list today, and we have students from a very wide geographical area. Isabel, you have your hand raised. Would you like to unmute and talk to us?
Currently unmuted. Alt plus A button. Hi, my name is Isabel. I'm from Grand Junction, Colorado, and I've never done this camp before.
Oh, Isabel, we are so excited to have you here. Grand Junction, Colorado is not too far from where I am. I am just outside of Salt Lake City, Utah.
That's where I go for my neurology appointments. From Aubrey Young to everyone, Aubrey-Weatherford, Texas.
Nice. All right. If you can mute back up, Isabel, instead of calling on everybody, I'm just going to do an overview from what I see in the chat. I can see Aubrey's from Texas. Jacob is from Georgia. Ian is from Alabama. Tyler's from Tennessee. Plus we have Henry from New Jersey. Darren from San Diego, Mia from Maryland, and Allie Packadair from Arizona. Hello, Allie. It's nice to hear you. We are so excited. All right. Now that we've had a moment to introduce ourselves, and if I didn't call your name out and give you a shout out, please forgive me. I don't want to run out of time because we have so much fun and so much exciting content to cover today. So everybody, it's now time to think like an investigator. So we are talking about crime scene investigation. So what I want to know from you guys is, what's the first thing that pops into your head when you think about a crime scene?
And you can go ahead and drop that in the chat or raise your virtual hand, and we'll read about 5 of your responses.
Thank you, Kaylee.
Alt mute. Currently unmuted. Alt plus A button. From Tyler Brandt -Ogle to everyone.
Oh, Tyler says blood and bodies, weapons and fingerprints. Oh, I have someone else that says a dead body.
Yellow tape around the scene. Excellent. We love that answer as well. And police. This is awesome, y'all, because today we're going to be talking about lots of different elements of a crime scene. And many of the answers that you shared with us are elements that we will be discussing in further detail. Ooh, one more answer just because I love it. Using your investigation skills. We're
I know
also
that.
going to
Erin
talk-
is like, here's your segue, teachers. We're moving.
Absolutely.
I love it. So some of you mentioned bodies and blood, but a crime scene doesn't always have a body and some blood. A crime scene is just a place where a crime has occurred. So that can happen in maybe a robbery, a burglary, maybe like a shoplifting could also be a crime scene. So it doesn't always have to have blood and guts and gore, but those might be the more exciting ones I can think of. So I just want to know, when you guys think crime scene investigation, do you automatically think, yes, expanded core curriculum? If you think that, you are going to get 50 extra bonus points from Robin Clark and about 25 extra bonus points from me, because there are so many of our expanded core curriculum skills that are involved in the crime scene investigation process. So Detective Kaylee and I, when we come across that, or if you're following along, I'm going to be pulling up, sharing a slide deck with you. You will notice that there's like a little ribbon at the bottom of the screen. We will point that out verbally and let you know, hey, here's some of those ECC areas that we thought we were covering here when we were discussing our crime scene investigation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Detective Kaylee, and she is going to talk to us about our learning objectives for the day. And then she is also going to talk to us about the very first step of the crime scene investigation process.
Thank you so much, Detective Kathy. I appreciate that. Could you share our deck, please, with the learning objectives, just in case we have anybody who'd prefer to read along as I visually as I verbally state those?
Absolutely. I'm hoping as soon as it loads, we can see them here.
Excellent. We can see them. So we have two major objectives today. And the first is that we are going to be able to, by the end of this lesson, name, describe, and outline 3 of the 7 steps to investigating a crime scene. So over the next few days, we're going to be talking about the 7 steps of crime scene investigation. But today we're only going to be discussing the first 3 because they're really exciting and really detailed. The first step is securing the crime scene. The second step is separating the witnesses. And the third step is scanning the crime scene. With those steps in mind, we're going to be able to use our deductive reasoning to answer questions about a crime scene. Most important questions you've probably heard of during school lessons is who, what, when, where, and why. This lesson today is going to cover the ECC skills of career education, sensory efficiency, and orientation and mobility. And we'll get to those in more detail as we move forward throughout the lesson. So we do need several materials. There will be a handout provided by the end of this lesson and before next lesson with our 7 steps of the crime scene investigation. That will be sent to the email that you've been using to register and receive your links for this camp session. We also ask that you have some blank paper to take notes of anything that you find interesting or any new information you've learned. Your notes are for your personal use, so that could be Braille paper, print paper, or you could be typing into a Word document. A method of writing for your notes, so if you're a Braille writer user, if you use a pen or a pencil, or your keyboard to type your notes down. And then a way to participate. We absolutely want to hear from you throughout the lessons. And as Detective Kathy said earlier, if we don't always call out an answer that you've typed into the chat or call on your raised hand, don't worry, and please answer the next question. Excellent. So we do have 7 steps to investigating a crime scene. And step 1 is secure the crime scene. So a crime scene has several different elements that we talked about: the who, what, when, where, and why. I'd love to hear a couple of your responses, and I'll read about 5 of them. If you raise your virtual or on-screen hand, or if you drop them into the chat, I would like an example of one of those elements of the crime scene. So who might be involved? Who's an example of that? What might be used to be studied? Where might a crime occur? And what's a why? Why would somebody commit a crime? You can either raise your hand or drop your answer in the chat. And I want to call on Aaron's hand just disappeared. Let's hear from Isabel again. Can you think of a who, what, when, where, or why that might be involved in a crime scene?
Alt+A button. So my idea. Gabriel likes it to everyone call them why. Revenge. My answer would be where the crime happens is in a park or somewhere.
Yeah, so maybe an outdoor crime scene setting such as a park. I'm going to thank you so much, Isabel. I'm going to take one more hand from Isaiah. And Isaiah, what might be a part of a crime scene? A who, what, when, where, or why?
Like a where, like maybe it happened on a bus or somewhere in an alley.
Yeah, right. So we've got maybe some inside areas and then also some outside areas like an alley. Lilith dropped into the chat and said somebody might rob a bank for money, right? That might be a really good motive. Revenge, Gabriel said, was an also possible motive. And then also when, Nicole said midday. So I did this on purpose where it might not all make sense just yet, but I wanted to see where we were as we were thinking about it. And so y'all had some really, really good answers that tie into what we're about to talk about. So I have some words that are bolded red and underlined, and the first word is crime. Just so we can establish, a crime is any act that is against the law that might hurt or violate somebody else's rights. So something illegal that usually involves a victim. The several elements of the crime scene that we're going to go into more detail throughout the next few days is the Who. The Who, which is a very great band, and also relating to our crime scene investigation, could be a suspect. A suspect is anybody who may have committed that crime. So the first who we're going to talk about is a suspect. The second who might be a victim, right? Somebody against whom that crime was committed. The victim is usually the person who gets hurt in a crime. Witnesses might be anybody who saw, heard, or otherwise was involved in the crime, but who didn't actually commit that crime. Witnesses usually have some really good information for our other who, the law enforcement, the people responding to the crime. The other who's of a crime scene might be emergency personnel or anybody else who's involved in collecting evidence. We also have the what's, right? So the what's of a crime scene might be evidence, the setting that the crime occurred, and any other information that is an actual object. I see that some people have said that the victim is somebody who's impacted, and yes, that's exactly what we're getting at. Evidence is any information that can lead to clues for investigators. And then the setting, like we said, could be inside, outside, somebody's apartment, maybe a bus. The when of the crime scene is when did the crime occur? Usually we try to do a time as well as a date to figure out when a crime happened. But also there's 2 other parts of a when for a crime scene. The first is when was the scene discovered? Sometimes people accidentally discover crime scenes. Sometimes a victim is able to inform police about a crime scene. And sometimes police are the ones who discover the crime scene. So the crime scene is discovered, and then our final when is when is the crime scene actually secured? Because sometimes there's a difference in time between the discovery and the securing of the scene. Yes, Allison mentioned that timestamps on security cameras are pieces of evidence that can help us establish the when. The where is sort of like the what's, right? It includes that setting, but it also can be where the suspect is right now, where the victims are right now, where the witnesses are right now. Not everybody stays at a crime scene, so sometimes investigators have to collect all of the people who may have left. And we talked about why, the motive. A motive is any feeling or desire that somebody has to commit an act. Crime motives can range all the way from revenge, money, gaining an item or an object, to something simple like they just want to engage in an activity. We'll discuss these elements in more detail, but the really important part about the who, what, when, where, and why is that we have to secure them in order to have a really, really thorough, accurate investigation. Evidence must be protected, and we try not to have people touch the evidence unless they're actually securing it. As we said earlier, evidence is what allows us to answer questions about the crime. Evidence can be items, but it can also be things that people, such as witnesses, say. We also want to remove any living people or animals from the crime scene. Nobody wants their pet cat, for example, walking right through some evidence and contaminating it. We want to consider fluctuating factors when we secure a crime scene. Those are things like weather or temperature. We don't want our crime scene to get rained all over if it's outside in a park. And last but not least, we also use crime scene tape, which somebody mentioned. The crime scene tape is traditionally bright yellow with black letters on it that says crime scene, do not cross. It's not actually sticky though, and it's not little like the tape that we use to fix a ripped piece of paper, for example. The purpose of crime scene tape is to be really big and really long so that it can be wrapped around areas like doorways. So that was a lot because we're in our introductory phases. Please drop any questions you have about the who, what, when, where, or why, as I briefly mentioned the expanded core curriculum skills that we just covered. Secure, contain, and protect the crime scene. Great, Isaiah, you are excellent at leading us to our next points of discussion. Yes, so the where of a crime scene. That could be, where is the crime scene located? City, state, country. It could also be, where is evidence located within the crime scene? And where might your people involved, like your suspects or your witnesses, be right now? Because oftentimes people don't hang out after they've committed a crime. We also just covered a couple of things, career education, right? Some of these words and vocabulary for the investigators, right? The career of crime scene investigator. We also have sensory efficiency, which is using your senses to get a good feel of the crime scene as you scan it, right? Using vision, touch, hearing, and then orientation and mobility. As we talk about our evidence and where it is located, we use directional concepts, and we also navigate through the scene so that evidence is not contaminated, such as Tyler brought up in the O.J. Simpson case. Tyler brought that up in the chat box. And Jacob mentioned that if the crime takes place, very specific details like Tuesday afternoon at 4 p.m., for example. So thank you so much for all of y'all. That was step one of securing the crime scene. And I'm going to turn it over to Detective Kathy.
Thank you, Detective Kaylee. I just have to say I'm loving the participation that I'm seeing in the chat. Thank you all so much. Detective Kaylee did a really great job of helping us know what we can do to secure that crime scene, and why it's so important to do it. And I love how, I believe it was Isaiah that said, we can't contaminate it, because if our crime scene gets contaminated, then that can lead us to the wrong conclusions. And that would not be a good thing. And someone might end up getting away with our crime, and when we could have caught them. So step 2 of our investigative process is we need to separate the witnesses. So I just want to know from you guys just a prediction or the thoughts that you have about why would it be important for us to separate the witnesses. And for this one, I'm going to ask you to put it in the chat, because since I'm sharing my screen, I don't get to see who raises their hand very well. So let me know in the chat, why do we need to separate our witnesses? I'm going to combine Allie and Jacob's thoughts. Our witnesses are different people, and they might have a different story to tell. We all have our own unique perspective on life, and no two people experience something exactly the same. So we can get different information from different people. I love it. Any other thoughts? Let's hear it from them all. I like it. We are thinking of a crime scene investigation kind of like a puzzle, and different witnesses can give us different pieces of that puzzle. So here are some things that we need to consider when we are interviewing our witnesses, because we're going to separate those witnesses and then we need to talk to them. We might get different stories from different witnesses. And again, that can help us put together those pieces of the puzzle. So we need to think, how are we going to talk to the witnesses? And I want you to think, in your life, do you speak to different people in different ways? I know that when I'm talking to my boss, I use a different tone of voice. I use different vocabulary and different language than I do when I'm talking to my husband. I love Allie's insight right there. Friends versus authority. Yes, we talk to our friends differently than we talk to authority figures. Think about this one. What about if you're talking to a child versus talking to an adult? Perfect. Lilith, you read my mind. She wouldn't talk to her younger siblings the same way that she talks to her pre-calculus teacher. And that's absolutely true. And we need to remember that when we're interviewing our witnesses. We need to take their age into account. We need to remember that this is not a friendly conversation. I'm not just hanging out talking to my friends. I'm an investigator and I'm trying to get information. So there are some really great steps that we can follow when we're conducting an interview with a witness. The first step is we want to keep an open mind. We want to be able to be open to every little bit of information that comes to us, because if we have already made these preconceived notions of what would be important and what is not important, we might completely miss out on a clue. The next thing we need to consider is we need to get that witness talking. So what do you think would be a better approach? Do you think we should ask yes, no questions? Or do you think we should ask open-ended questions? Tyler, I absolutely agree. We need to ask those open-ended questions so that can get our conversation moving, because it's really easy to just say yes or no and then stop. Little side note here, that's a great strategy to use for social situations as well.
Everyone calling.
If you ask open-ended questions when you're hanging out with your friends, you're going to have more to talk about. And the same thing when we're interviewing our witnesses, they'll have more to talk about too. The next step is if we can start off with easy questions, that can be a good way to get momentum going. Conversational momentum is when we start talking and then it just kind of, everybody joins in and we continue talking. So in movies a lot, I'm thinking of the movie The Incredibles when, who's the bad guy in that movie? I can't remember, but he's like, oh, darn it, you got me monologuing again.
The Underminer?
That could be. You want to see if you can get your witness monologuing, because the more they'll talk, the more they can reveal. That is fantastic. The next thing we want to do is we want to keep our opinions to ourselves. We don't want them to know kind of where we're thinking and what we're thinking, because we're really focused on facts. We want the facts and just the facts, because facts are verifiable and we can't convict somebody based on an opinion. Another tactic that we can use is we can ask our witnesses when we're interviewing them. They may know of other witnesses, or they may be aware of some other evidence that's available that will help us crack that case. So we're thinking about that as we're interviewing them. Oh, and that's a great question, Tyler. At the same time, they could self-incriminate themselves, right? Yeah, if you're interviewing, maybe you'll end up cracking them and getting a confession. That is fantastic. I love it. Then you want to look for holes or contradictions. So if you're talking to one witness and they say, oh, I remember the man came up the stairs just as I was going out to walk my dog at 2 o'clock. And then another witness says, the man was coming down the stairs when I was walking my dog at 2 o'clock. Then you're going to want to find those contradictions, because he can't be going up and down at the same time. And you're going to want to focus on those to see if you can find out where the truth really lies. One thing as an inspector and an investigator, you need to keep everything confidential. Let me know in the chat, what does that word mean, confidential? I love it. To keep it private, in secret, and then my favorite definition, you don't blab it everywhere. That is perfect. If we're keeping something confidential, we're not telling anyone else about it. Or we're only talking to the people that have the clearance to know that information. So if Detective Kaylee and I are working the same case, I could talk to her about that. Exactly, Allie, like HIPAA is confidential. Way to make that connection. Thank you so much. And then we want to make sure that we document our interview. What are some ways you can think of that we could document this interview that we have with our witnesses?
Write it down on a piece of paper.
Yeah, we could write it down. We could take notes. I like how Ian says we could record it with an MP3 or take video and make it an MP4. I think, yes, if we're recording it is really helpful, because then we don't have to remember every little thing that was said. We can go back and review it. And then the interview itself becomes evidence for our case. I love it. And then the last thing we want to think of is we want to make sure that when we're interviewing our witnesses, we leave them knowing that they can come to us with more information if they remember it. Because if I'm being interviewed, sometimes if it's a stressful situation, I might not remember everything, but maybe when I go home that night and I'm lying in bed having a hard time getting to sleep, then something might come to me and I might remember that. I want to make sure as an investigator that the people that I'm interviewing feel open to come back to me. So how do you think interviewing our witnesses could be career education skills?
Maybe you can see their belongings to see if they have anything to do with the crime scene.
Yeah, I think that's going to come next. You may have I think you've jumped ahead to our next step, step 3,
Oh,
where
sorry.
we're scanning it. And I love your excitement. So how are interview skills career education skills?
It can help you speak to people.
Yes, it can help us speak to people. We will have to speak to people in our jobs. We will have to interview for a job. An employer might interview us. So if we're practicing our interview skills in our crime scene investigation, that can help us as we're looking for jobs. I love all your participation in your chat. Thank you so much for your focus for our interview skills. And I'm going to turn the time back over to Detective Kaylee as she's going to talk about step 3.
Thank you so much, Detective Kathy. And step 3 is also pretty informational. So just to recap very quickly, we had step 1, which was our original securing of the crime scene. Securing the crime scene is important because we have to be able to separate our witnesses, which was step 2. And step 3 is now scanning the crime scene. So we've made sure that everybody who doesn't need to be there is gone. We've made sure that our witnesses are talking to the correct people so that we can get information from them. And now we're at the crime scene and we're ready to investigate. So scanning the crime scene involves marking potential evidence. Is somebody not muted perhaps? I hear an echo. Excellent, love that, thank you. Is scanning the crime scene to look for potential pieces of evidence. This is that quick initial skimming, one might say, of the area so that we can hit the very important major pieces of the scene. So we use sensory efficiency as crime scene investigators. We have to use our 5 senses in order to gather information about the crime scene. The first sense that many investigators use is residual vision. So if you have any vision that's left that is functional, simply seeing what there is to see. But you don't necessarily have to have vision to accurately scan a crime scene. We also can use smell. Smell might be important if we detect danger, like a fire starting. Smell might also help us determine if we smell some lovely perfume in a person's apartment who may not wear perfume. That might indicate the presence of other people. We can also use touch in a way that doesn't contaminate the evidence. So that might be finding a wet spot on a carpet, right? That could be some evidence that we need. And hearing, if there's a leaky pipe or a dripping faucet, or even if we hear the neighbors talking through the wall, that might indicate some potential witnesses who could have heard something on our side of the crime scene. Drop in the chat for me, do y'all ever think it is appropriate to use taste when you are investigating a crime scene of unknown origin? Can anybody think of an example where that might be a good solution? Or is taste one of those senses that we may not necessarily use? Yeah, I'm getting a resounding no from the folks in the chat. Absolutely not. Oh, I heard an
Maybe poison, but no, because then poison could kill you.
Yeah, we definitely don't want to accidentally taste poison or blood, some other folks mentioned in the chat. So when we talk about sensory efficiency, when we talk about using our 5 senses to gather information about a crime scene, we may not need to use all 5 senses. Yes, oh, we could also contaminate the evidence with our saliva and DNA. So as we use our senses to gather information about the crime scene, it's important for us to develop a mental map or a picture of where items are located. Oftentimes, investigators are going to use those specific directional concepts that we often talk about in orientation and mobility lessons. So they might use terms such as in front of or behind. Maybe they found that spot of blood on the carpet behind the green couch in somebody's apartment. Or perhaps they found a shoe, one single discarded shoe, in front of a tree in a park. They may also use forward or backwards. Sometimes, especially in areas like parks or alleyways, you may not have a specific environmental marker that makes it easy to talk about where you have found a piece of evidence. They may say, if you go towards the green tree, or rather the brown tree with the green leaves, and continue forward about 10 feet, you may find another piece of evidence. It's also important to look backwards, right? Turn around, use that 360-degree turn to make sure that you're getting all of the evidence that you can see within a crime scene. We may use directional concepts such as left and right. You know, maybe there was a body found, and I'm using that reference since lots of us have talked about bodies so far during the lesson. And to the left of the body, they found a Q-tip. Or to the right of the body, maybe somebody found a book, right? So information that may be important, we have to describe where it's located in relation to the crime. Last but not least, we can also use the concepts of above and below. Below might be important because we're talking about below or underneath a table, a car, a picnic table, right? A piece of furniture. And above might be important because it's always a good idea to look up or sniff up or hear up when you have an entire scene that requires your full study. So we're going to do a quick little game about scanning our crime scene. Remember that we use 4 of our 5 senses to scan a crime scene. And when we find information, we want to use those directional concepts. So go ahead and drop your answers in the chat, and we'll see how much we agree or disagree for 3 different scenarios. The first scenario, scenario number 1. A broken light bulb dangles from the ceiling. That piece of evidence is blank in relation to you. So number 1, drop your answer in the chat. A broken light bulb dangles from the ceiling. This piece of evidence is blank in relation to you. Several people have said in front of, somebody said above. Somebody mentions that we're using our senses of vision. Up, above, excellent. So we've got folks who are thinking a couple of different lines of thoughts, which I absolutely love. So yes, we can use vision to know about a broken light bulb, but sometimes we can use hearing. Sometimes if you've got a wire or a buzzing sound, or maybe you can hear the clinking, all of those could encompass a broken light bulb. The key piece of evidence, if we put on our detective hat, I'm sorry, Detective Kathy, what's the phrase we're using? I want to be sure.
We're going to think like an investigator.
Thinking like an investigator. The key piece of information was the ceiling. So typically a ceiling is above you or up in relation to you, but it could also be forward if you have to take a few more steps into the room before you get to the light bulb that is above you. Excellent, excellent. All right. This makes me very excited to hear what we have to say for scenario number 2. Again, you can drop your answers in the chat for scenario number 2. As you step into the victim's apartment, you can hear the neighbors chatting through the wall. The neighbors might be blank, what kind of who, because they may have heard something on your side. So you're in the victim's apartment, you can hear neighbors chatting through the wall. The neighbors might be blank because they may have heard something. Excellent. We have a resounding agreement within our chat box that they are witnesses. So anybody? Yes, Miss Detective Kathy.
I want to ask a follow-up question to that one.
Yes,
So
please.
if you hear voices, I'm assuming there's more than one person on the other side of that wall. Would you want to separate those witnesses before you talk to them?
I don't know. I think we should ask our detectives in the chat whether or not they would like to separate those witnesses.
I have a no, I have a yes, and I have, I think, yes. I think we need a few more answers to know for sure. Jacob says yes. Yeah, even though maybe it's a couple that's in that apartment and they don't like they're friendly and everything. I think it's still important that we separate the witnesses before we talk to them, because they're both going to have a different perspective on what they heard.
Thank you so much, Detective Kathy. Yes. And sometimes witnesses, after we question them or talk to them or interview them, we might find that they may not actually have any relevant or useful information. And that's okay too, right? When you're in your initial steps of scanning this crime scene, this is when you first arrived and everything could possibly be related to that crime. Somebody mentioned it depends on the situation. And I do, in the chat box, I do agree that sometimes, especially if you have a very young witness, a child, for example, it may be appropriate to leave that witness with their parent. But, and this is the law in most states, I can't speak for all states or countries, the police or other crime scene investigators do have the right to separate a witness from a crime from their parent if their parent is preventing that child or witness or person who is dependent upon them from telling accurate, truthful information. Parents do have the right to be present for questioning of people under their care if those people are suspects, but that right doesn't always extend to if those people are witnesses, because they can say something and they're not going to get into trouble. Excellent. Somebody mentioned put them back together after interviewing them. Excellent. Yeah, we're not saying to keep these people, these witnesses, these partners, perhaps folks living in the same house separated forever, right? Just for the purposes of getting their initial statements and talking to them specifically about the crime, it's a good idea to keep them separated. Excellent. So those were scenarios 1 and 2, but we do have a third scenario to test our scanning of the crime scene skills. Number 3 says, you can smell a plate of food the victim left on the table. It smells like bacon and waffles. What time of day might the victim have been killed at? So one last time, this is one where we do have a body, which we love bodies, we found. You can smell a plate of food the victim left on the table. Smells like bacon or waffles. They may have been killed at what time of the day? Excellent. So from the chat, I've got breakfast in the morning before 9 a.m. Very specific. Excellent. Breakfast or early morning. And what a shame that they didn't finish that breakfast. That is always a shame. And somebody said morning, maybe between 6 and 9 a.m. I love the specificity here. I love that we're using context clues such as breakfast foods like bacon and waffles. Somebody else said they should know they eat breakfast at 6:30 a.m. That's very early. And I'm happy that you greet the day so early. Can we be certain, 100% certain, based just on this unfinished meal of bacon and waffles, that this crime definitely occurred during the day? Can y'all drop those thoughts in the chat or raise a hand? So some folks from the chat have said, no, it could be dinner. You could have breakfast for dinner. Maybe the suspect stole the breakfast. Yep, that's an idea. I'm going to take Isabel. Do you think you can be absolutely certain that somebody would eat
Okay,
breakfast
I didn't
foods
know
during
you
the
were-
morning?
I would say lunch, maybe.
Yeah, so they might be eating it for a different meal, like lunch. Thank you so much, Isabel. And I'm
You're
going to take,
welcome.
oop, I saw Jane's hand, but maybe not. Just a quick call, anybody else who wanted to unmute and tell us our thoughts about this conclusion or inference that we've just drawn. I do want to give our folks who are unmuting a chance to answer.
And while we're giving our friends a chance to unmute and answer, I'm going to share something very personal about me. I was 18 years old before I knew other people ate waffles for breakfast. Because my family, it was a strict dinner food. I had only had waffles for dinner until I went to college and was introduced to other people who had it for breakfast.
Oh my goodness. What a disclosure. Thank you, Detective Kathy. Yeah, so that's the thing about scanning the scene. We are trying to see what information might be important, but we're not necessarily drawing inferences or conclusions or using our deductive reasoning just yet. This is just the overview. So step 3, scanning the crime scene, had 2 major components. The first was we are using our appropriate senses to gather information. And the second was we're using directional concepts to describe that information and the location of what we have found. That covers sensory efficiency and orientation and mobility in the ECC. Detective Kathy, I will turn it back over to you.
Oh my goodness, there has been so much for us to digest here. So I just want to take a moment and review a little bit. We have talked about some ECC skills of career education because some people for their job, they are crime scene investigators. And some of those skills that they use are interviewing skills. They're going to have to use their social interaction skills to be able to read some body language and to be able to listen to tone of voice, as well as the information that those witnesses are sharing with them. So we talked about the first 3 steps. There are 7 total steps to secure the crime scene, but today we only talked about the first 3. What was the first step we need to do when we get to the crime scene? You can let me know in the chat. Tyler says we are going to determine who, what, when, why, and where. That is part of the first step. But the very first thing we need to do when we get to a crime scene is we need to secure it. We need to lock it down. We want to make sure that nobody gets into our crime scene to possibly contaminate it. We want to make sure that we are able to document who was at our crime scene. And we want to make sure that we are securing our evidence. What's a way that we can secure our crime scene?
And Detective Kathy, while we're waiting on those answers of securing our crime scene, I really like the first 3 steps because they all start with the letter S. So that helps me remember them in my head. So secure was our first step. And I think we've got some folks in the chat who have talked about securing the crime scene.
Yes, the yellow tape. Oh my goodness. And Jacob has totally picked up on those first 3 S words. I love it. So we can make sure there's crime scene investigation tape. If it is in, maybe it's in a room, in a building, we may have the ability to lock it and put our tape up to tell people that they shouldn't be going in. I love it. Our next one was separate the witnesses. Tell me again, why do we want to keep our witnesses separate? You can let me know in the chat, or you could raise your hand. I love it. The first answer has come in. Different brains tell different stories. Most witnesses have different stories, and we have different perspectives. That is absolutely right. We want to make sure, and sometimes when we get with a group of people, we
Detective
can
Kathy.
kind of be swayed a little bit by what someone else says. What about that, Detective Kaylee?
Zachary also raised a hand in the actual participants.
Oh, thank you, Zachary. Would you like to unmute and share?
Can you hear me?
Yes. You can go ahead and share.
What was the question again?
Why separate the witnesses?
To keep them tugging against the wall.
Yeah, so if we heard them talking through the wall, we want to make sure that the stories that they're telling us when we ask them questions are of their own remembering. Is that what you mean, Zachary?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Excellent. Excellent. Because sometimes if I might not remember exactly, and Kaylee says, oh, well, I'm pretty sure that it was strawberry syrup on the waffles, and I might not remember exactly. I might say strawberry syrup just because Detective Kaylee said that too. So if we keep it separate, then I would just be able to say, oh, I don't remember what kind of syrup it was. And the last step we talked about today was scanning the crime scene. What I want to know from you guys, give me a yes or a no in the chat. When I scan the crime scene for step 3, am I doing a quick scan or am I doing a very thorough scan? I guess that way I asked that wrong. You can say quick or thorough. I have a lot of answers saying it's a thorough scan, which I am really excited to tell you that tomorrow we'll be talking about how to complete a thorough scan. But Lilith, you have it absolutely right. We're going to do a quick scan first. We're going to check for like we're checking for danger, we're checking for those obvious clues, those obvious pieces of evidence. But the thorough in-depth scan comes a little later on in our process. So we've secured the crime scene, separated the witnesses, and scanned our crime scene. We talked about some great vocabulary words today. The first one is motive. I want you guys to let me know in the chat or raise your hand. What is motive? Mia has her hand raised. Go ahead and unmute, Mia.
Motive. It's like emotion.
Emotion can be a motive. That is true. Anybody else have anything else to add to that definition? Nice. A reason. That is our why. Perfect. Why did the person do this? Why did they do what they did? And emotion plays a big factor into that. Detective Kaylee, can you read for me vocab word number 2? Because it is hidden on my screen.
Oh, terrible accident. Suspect.
Ooh, a suspect is one of those who's that we're looking for. What is a suspect? You can go ahead and raise your hand or let me know in the chat.
A person that commits crime.
A person who may have committed the crime. Perfect. Well done, you guys. What about the victim?
Same thing.
A victim commits the crime?
Yes.
Close. The victim is the person who had a crime committed against them. So let's
I got them
say,
confusing.
all right, let me see if I can help clear that up. So let's say that I have a delicious chocolate chip cookie sitting on the counter, and it is my chocolate chip cookie. Well, I have not eaten it right away. I'm saving it for later. But my daughter comes home, or man, maybe it's Lilith that comes along, and she takes my cookie and she eats it. I would say Lilith is the suspect because I think she's the one that ate the cookie, and I'm the victim because I didn't get to eat my delicious chocolate chip cookie. Does that help make sense? And Ian is saying, oh, no, not the chocolate chip cookie. Zachary, does that help clear it up a little bit?
Yes, and your name is Keely, right?
Sorry, what?
Your name is Keely, right?
My name is Kathy. I'm Detective Kathy. Thank
Hey,
you for
Kathy.
clarifying that. I appreciate it. All right. The fourth vocabulary word we had was evidence. Evidence is any clue that can help us figure out what happened. So let's say that Lilith wears very distinctive shoes, and I can see she's been out in the mud, and I see her muddy shoe print on the floor by my cookie. That is evidence. A crime. A crime is anytime something illegal has happened. That is a crime.
Like speeding or shooting.
Exactly. An illegal act that usually involves hurting or violating somebody else's rights. Tyler, that's an excellent definition. Oh, first the cookie, now the wood floors. Why? You guys are hilarious. All right, and our last vocab word is a witness. What is a witness, you guys? Mia, you can go ahead and unmute.
A witness is like a crime that someone uses, like a gun or anything.
You are close. I think you're thinking more of evidence. A witness is somebody who did not commit the crime, but who might have information about the crime. So maybe they heard something, maybe they saw something. I love it. All right, I have 1 minute. If any of you have, well, let's jump into our extension activity. So we are going to participate in an app called Flip. And I know it used to be called Flip Grid, but now they've changed the word to Flip. And I have put all of our extension activities there. So Leanne will be sending you the link, and you can click on the link, and that will open up our group. And there's 4 different topics in our group. So I'm going to say for our extension activity, we are going to be solving a crime. Sadly, this one does not have a dead body in it. Allie, we will be emailing you the link to access the Flipgrid. So you just got home from hanging out with your friends, and as you approach your bedroom door, you feel that something is off. You open your door and you find your room is in disarray, and notice that your favorite gaming device is missing. So what we're going to do is you're going to tell us what are the steps you're going to take to, number 1, secure the crime scene. Number 2, search for and separate your witnesses. And number 3, scan the crime scene to mark your evidence. So I'm really excited to see. I'm really excited to see what you guys come up with for how you're going to secure your crime scene, separate your witnesses, and scan that crime scene. And the fun thing about Flipgrid is everyone who has the link can get in and look at everyone's postings. Detective Kaylee and I can also get on and we can create videos and see what you've posted and post a video of our own in response.
Thank you so much, Detective Kathy. Unless it is absolutely not okay by the other panelist hosts, could we take about 2 minutes just for any questions that anybody might have, or should we do that at the top of our next session?
We can summarize, but I need to try to wrap up and we'll just stop the recording. So just like to thank Detective Kathy and Detective Kaylee for a wonderful lesson today. I know we're running right up to the minute. I'm going to pause our recording